Good morning. We are going to start. Thank you for being with us, for joining us today for this webinar. This webinar has simultaneous interpretation. If you need it, please, under the controls to Zoom, click on interpretation and click on language and select the language you wish to hear. Some basic rules for this seminar. So this is a learning space and learning and respect. Please keep your cameras turned off during the webinar to avoid disruptions. If you haven't done so, please write your full name, country, and organization in the chat. And any questions that you have, please limit them to the presentations discussed, and the questions will be forwarded to the speaker and answered at the end of the presentation. As you know, this is a MARFON webinar, and we are talking all about climate change and reef rescue initiative. Today, we're going to talk about the objective, which is to increase the resilience of the MAR in environmental and cultural aspects, which include financial sustainability, coordination with government, strengthening capacities, and emergency response and continued restoration. And we will continue to see what this implies. Strengthen the regional sensitization with the exchange of knowledge and experience regarding reef rescue response in different types of emergencies in the Mesoamerican Reef system. I'm going to introduce the other speakers, Dr. Claudia Padilla, who is independent consultant, and she has 35 years of experience in ecology and conservation of coral reefs. She's a pioneer in coral cultivation for reef restoration. She's a referral for an innovation of restoration techniques. She's a specialist in strategic planification for rehabilitation of damaged reefs, and she has experience in restorations with short and long-term approach. With Claudia, MARFON authorized the response protocol for rescue of reefs affected by hurricanes. So she is going to talking today on this topic, how it has been updated and important aspects. The next speaker is Dr. María del Carmen García. She's the General Director of Conservation of CONANP in Mexico. She has more than 30 years of experience in marine conservation in the CONANP. She has led important natural protected areas as Banco, Chinchorro, Isla Contoy, etc. Since 2005, she's promoted the restoration of the reefs after hurricanes and groundings, recovering more than 70,000 colonies and coral fragments. The author of more than 30 scientific publications on conservation. Today, she's going to talk on the response regarding possible grounding of vessels in Puerto Morelos. And talking about hurricane response work. And our last speaker is Licenciado Irving Leonardo Chávez, Subdirector of the Reserve of the Banco Chinchorro Biosphere. He is from the National Commission of Natural Protected Areas, Mexico, CONANP. He has a lot of experience in management and conservation in natural protected areas. He's a specialist of marine coastal ecosystem conservation, promoter of strengthening community actions, and he also is also instructor of brigades of post storm response, and he's going to talk about the response regarding the stony coral tissue loss disease in Banco Chinchorro, with also talking about the emergency fund and talk about that experience. And if you have any complaints, well, we have the QR of the MAR Fund grievance mechanism. Markan. And here's our website so you can look for us. So I'm going to pass the microphone to Dr. Padilla so she can start her presentation. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very happy to share this topic with María Carmen and Irving. I'm sure they're very important subjects, and I'm going to talk about the response protocol for the reef rescue of reefs affected by hurricanes and where we are right now. So why a protocol for assisting hurricane emergencies? Well, we all know that reefs are important ecosystems, and one of the important characteristics that we benefit is that they dissipate up to 90% of the energy of the waves, protecting the coasts and communities. Unfortunately, when a hurricane affects these, there is a high level of fragmentation of coral colonies, they're generating rubble in the area that can affect the colonies and their live tissue. And in the wetlands, which are the most affected, there are certain communities like the Acropola palmata and Acropola cervicornis are the most vulnerable because of their morphology. And the protocol to intervene in these cases and to have an opportunity to rescue these affected colonies, most important is to understand that a coordinated and timely response can mark the difference between the final definite loss or recovery of the reef. So this protocol starts in 2018 when Nature Conservancy with the government of Mexico developed the first protocol of early warning and immediate response for Puerto Morelos, where the first 39 brigaders were trained. And then the following year, there was an updating of this protocol to be able to leave it at general level that could be applied in all the SAM region. Then another small training took place in Isla Mujeres of brigaders, and during this protocol, in the period of 2020 and 2024, the application in the field for the hurricanes Delta, Zeta, Grace, and Beryl in Quintana Roo took place. From this, we detected the experience to incorporate new techniques, and there was a different format of the protocol. And in 2025, there is an updating that was directed by MAR Fund, and this for this initiative of reef rescue. And up to date, we have more than 220 brigaders that are trained. So how did this process of updating take place? We formed a multidisciplinary team where Sara and myself and Kalina Cepeda from Nature Conservancy, and Gutierrez Cepeda, and La Marina, who is the instructor of brigades, who has leaded all these courses. So we had input from the 4 countries of the MAR, where their committees, their brigades, both in Mexico, Belize, Guatemala, and Honduras, received these contributions and sent their contributions with interviews, discussion tables, panels, validation workshop, and a process of socialization took place. This technical validation took place through the revision of content on behalf of MARFund, and the socialization consisted in the launching of the protocol for the public, where it was presented, and some socialization workshops that were directed towards the instructors and brigaders. How is this protocol structured? There are three main blocks with 5 sections. The first block includes the introduction to understand the reefs and the protocol itself. And this part of the coordination is where you have to attend the planning, the organization, and of the brigade before starting with the response actions. Then in this block C, which is the central part of the protocol, where the response takes place, I will explain this later. This has a section of IF, which are it includes the annexes, the references, the field formats, etc.
Do we have three? We have the first stage of alert, where we have a notification of a possible hurricane or storm, and we're all ready to start our action. If the impact is in a work zone, we go to stage 2, which is a immediate response, where we do all the field work, field actions. And when this immediate response and action is done, we start with the stage 3, which is more of the follow-up and monitoring activities. So we will see how these 3 stages are more structured. And the first thing that we include is a map of decision routing to orient the decision making during this process. And we have 3 blocks of the 3 stages correspondingly in different colors. And we have these triangles with questions to take action that orient us through a yes or a no answer to define the route that we will take. And the yellow boxes indicate the process in which you're working in the field. And the purple are the reports that you have to integrate. This is what gives you a general panorama of the response. And so inside of this response is the stage 2, which is the action in the water. We're working directly in the field. We did a few changes to include tools of how to work. We modified the classification of damages with this table with format that has more defined and complete elements. So it allows us to classify the percentage of affected colonies, and then comes the process of cleaning and removal of debris. It's something important that needs to be done in case they exist in the water. And then part 3 is the recollection and stability of corals, the collection and stability of corals. And here is where we've done many schematics and procedures to be able to help the execution of these actions, to be able to identify how to prioritize the fragments and in response to how the properties and which ones to choose in which moments to make the process of rescue of the fragments that were generated. And posterior, after, we do a mapping and markup of the area of the interventions. important is for each stage is to have a a meeting, a consultation before doing the action, and have a uh, post response after to be able to accumulate the experiences, which we then document in the different formats to register the activities that are executed and the results that are had. Finally, when this immediate response is done, we go into a third stage of post response, and it's the follow up of and monitoring of the actions and seeing how the corals are doing. We can establish coral nurseries, which allows to link them with different networks and evaluate the season. And there are formats that are very helpful that allows us to identify the response plan to the next year, the list of security and different formats. It's a very important and valuable format. And finally, this new renewal of the protocol is in base of 7 years of experience, and this structure facilitates the coordination before, during, and after the hurricane. It is a flexible tool which each brigade adapts to their capacity and resources and context. So this is a tool that we're all participating in. And this is where my presentation finishes, and I thank you very much with your help. Thank you so much, Claudia, with this presentation. And we invite you all to share your questions, and we will read them at the end. Now I'll give the word to Carmen Garcia, which will share her presentation. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I've had the opportunity to be in this project from the very beginning, and I see with prideful eyes how everything has developed. So finally, we hope to have a very satisfactory responses. I will share the experience of the team, and I am the one that's sharing it. Basically, the response actions for the grounding of embarkments in the port of Morelos. Okay. So as we continue with the part of Andres that was sharing how this project tries to adapt itself to have resilience facing climate change, knowing that there will be more hurricanes and a rise in temperature. This is some pictures of Huracan Wilma, and that translates into groundings and strandings. So then Claudia was sharing with us the importance of acting in time, in a timely and efficient manner, even more with the elements and technology that we have. In the case of the areas, protected areas, I wanted to remember our colleagues from Mexico and Honduras. From Mexico, we have 232 natural protected areas, and the area is much more bigger than the marine area is bigger than the ground area. So we have 25 areas in the Pacific and in the Atlantic, and in the Caribe, there's a case study where we can find the Quintana Roo, which has been a very important site because there we have the UNAM, and we have the investigators, we have press service prestations, and we have fisheries. So as Claudia mentioned, in 2018, brigades were trained as guardians for the reef, which allowed a improvement in all the protocols and the different organizations lid that are part of Marathon. And we have 3 days of intense training, and 33 brigades trained in the Federation of Mexican Subaquatics, and it's made to optimize all the procedures and security of this first generation of brigade people. We have a mission, which is people with identity committed with coral reefs that are open to receive continuous trainings to assist the coral reef and overall work as a team with shared results and security rules. So now we have a structure and we have these different capacities that are being developed and the physical condition as well, which because the brigade people are the ones that give the attention. In 2019, we had the the we faced damage of a coral reef by a boat, and this also damaged the same boat and the coral reefs. And previously, from 2000, we've had we've had groundings that are very important, and we've since given us the task to develop different protocols with different entities and these different procedures. And the differences between a hurricane and a grounding, in the grounding there is a person that is responsible, a fiscal response, and there's communication and coordination in between instances. And if there's a because there's many different elements that are hard to coordinate because there's 3 instances with UNAM. There's an area that's protected, and we have too much damage in the coral reef, and it's specified as so before anything, we need to know the procedures and to know that there are some organisms that are at risk, and we have to attend them in an immediate manner. Everything here is with previous agreement with the fiscally, and we have to find these first attentions. Something that is very important is to do the mappings and do a quick evaluation of the area to know the species and the and there could be a pay of a fine in any way. And the evidence is very important because when we have groundings of boats and some of the parts of the boats are found in as debris, and it can remain in the water, and it can be it's the important part is to damage the least in the moment of removing the boat, and that's why we have different equipment as brigades to evade any unnecessary damages. So after we could rescue the what was able to be rescued, we have more time and we do primary and secondary actions in response to the protocol that Claudia shared with us, and that's how we act. And so here we have some of the pictures of how the brigades in Puerto Morelos work. And we have to identify and mark the different areas and to have that register and those documents.
The monitor is very important because the monitoring is important because often the actions are not given continuity. And so we understand that it's difficult to have financing for this. So after Puerto Morelos, after the grounding of the boat, stick boat, we had a meeting with the Secretariat of the Marine Secretariat. And we know that there is a criminal procedure or a legal procedure that was financed, thank goodness, for the primary restoration and secondary. But in 2022, we found a tree that floated down after a storm in the Caribbean, and this reached the reef. And with one of the boats from the barge, one of the vessels, we were able to remove it, thank goodness, and it was they all chopped it into pieces, and it was difficult to do this. It seems like rescuing a tree trunk is very difficult, but there was nobody to pay the hand labor. We had no equipment. We used whatever we could put our hands on, and so we did not want any risk in damaging the reef. So we managed to do this. And in 2024, these brigades were activated according to the protocol, which is very important to activate this every year to know what each person is doing. And for any type of continuous of situation to be able to do whatever is possible. So in 2024, we had a Category 2 Hurricane Beryl, and 5th of July, which Category 4. Then also Ellen that came with, it caused quite a bit of harm. And we were monitoring the effects of Beryl. We detected the a boat or a ship that was grounded that was no longer in the Arrecife Limones, and the number 4 was this tropical storm Sara. And these are the consequences of secondary actions that we had that has damage in the coral reef and different areas in Limones and also in Jardines. We detected the grounding here, and we can see the route that the boat had, and it destroyed particularly all of the matrix of the white calcareum. And it was, we could tell that it was not damage caused by a hurricane, but by an object that passed through these corals and their branches. And we detected this. The evidence here on the left, we can see some of the parts of the ship, and we were able to collect some of them. We never actually found the boat, but the photographs are very important. And the managers in the area, some of the brigaders, were able to collect these parts of the ship that were stranded there. And Dr. Claudia Padilla made an evaluation of the harm that was caused, a very quick evaluation. And you can see here from the harm from 0 to 5 and the surface of impact. And then after that, there were the primary and secondary tasks took place and monitoring continued. And during different periods, we carried out this monitoring to be able to compare and see which was more effective. And they stabilized in one of the sites where the were dead coral and um, the dead coral area. So they were marked and stabilized, and it is important. The financing is very important, and important thing is that we are there. Some academics, some of the brigaders, and the guards, from the marine park, and the students and the instructors, and we know that's very important to have these different funds. And in 2024, and this is the total of donations from the Mar Fund actions, emergency actions, and also positive legacy. And I have not included every single one, but also the subsidies and all the donations for this protected area. Now, what are the success factors of these brigades? We talked about how important it is to follow the protocols or procedures that have optimized, as Claudia Padilla said, the organization and leadership, a group of people, a person that is guiding the brigades, and it is very important to have the training to share the knowledge. The knowledge in these training sessions help us to improve techniques, to get to know the environment, communicate, and also when we're underwater, it is very important to have all this in mind. The people, when you're underwater, the applause of the public also give us a lot of hope. They bring us snacks. They also bring us T-shirts, and all of these collaboration that comes from land are very important to all this recognition and the material equipment for security of the brigaders. Very good planification, the preparation before evaluation and improvement, and institutional support, strategic alliances with the service providers, with the government of the state, and other organizations that participate, and also to share all of this work. We were in the New York Times with Paola Rojas a couple of times. So, and with climate change, the measures of adaptation of brigaders in the National Park of Puerto Morelos has showed several contingencies, permanent training, a flexible structure, because we know that often there are changes, so we incorporate students, and often there are changes. This is important. Financing is very important. And is totally necessary for the operation. The timely intervention of the brigaders to mitigate the situation and to be able to take monitoring and being able to take better decisions is also called adaptive management. And so, on my behalf, well, this is something that we have been doing with the groundings. And I can say that there has been a difference because since I was in Escala, I think there have been about 25 grounding situations. And having trained brigaders really makes a difference. Thank you very much, Maria del Carmen. If anybody has any questions for Maria del Carmen, put them in the chat, please. And then we will listen to the presenter, Mr. Irving Chávez, who is going to talk about the response actions, emergency response actions due to coral bleaching in the Chinchorro biosphere. So I would like to thank Marfan firstly for this invitation. And I think that these spaces are very important for exchanging experiences and knowledge. And there's a lot of coherence in what we're doing. First is the protocol for the brigades that shows us how these brigades work, how they coordinate, and the actions that take place in a parametric environment after a hurricane. So what I'm going to present now is how to approach the emergency fund topic with the emergency fund of MAR fund and how we implement it in Banco Chinchorro. I'm Irving Chávez, sub-director of the reserve of Banco Chinchorro Biosphere. And we had an experience in previous years that complements with all of this that is being commented today. So we had the problem of the bleaching syndrome, coral bleaching in a very different way. How did we approach it? Now, this disease is a loss of the live tissue on coral, which is very aggressive and majority of times it's lethal, and it manifests as some patches, white patches of dead tissue, a loss of tissue. And so this was detected in 2014 in Florida, and it advanced quickly across the whole area you see on the map. Here we can mention, and for those of us that are in Mexico, I'd like to mention that here, in Mexico, it was managed as the bleaching syndrome, and we don't know if we wanted to compare it to whether or not it's the same as the bleaching syndrome, SCTLD. And this is caused by a stress caused by increase of temperature in a long period of time and affects the coral, gives them this color, but it doesn't mean that they're dead. And they continue to have live tissue. But the síndrome blanco, the white bleaching syndrome, in English SCTLD, is you see the skeleton of the coral. For example, on one side in the bleaching, if we translate it or we use a human term, it's when we get very pale because we are dizzy or we are stressed, but then we recover. But the other is like a leprosy where the bone is exposed. It's something similar to that, let's say. This is to give us an idea of how to differentiate these two diseases. So here we see how fast the bleaching system affected a colony. Here we see a follow-up done by Dr. Lorenzo Alvarez Philip from the UNAM. In 2018, he identified a brain coral wherein we saw a very accelerated advance. In the first 10 days, we saw that had lost almost 50% of its live tissue. 8 days later, it was 80%. In 38 days, it was a colony that was totally dead. And then after that, the total coverage of microalgae. And it is said, and this, many people say that it is not present because of its ecological impact and is considered the most lethal in the history, the stony coral syndrome. And it was identified that there were some species that were more susceptible than others, and we have some that are known very well by their scientific name and others by their common name. Among them, we see the Androgela cylindrus, the Dicoquenia stochassil, the coral flor, and the Meandrina meandritis at the top right. These four species, we're going to talk about them a little bit later. And then in the Mar area from Mexico, we see them from 2018 to 2022. it started to affect the reefs in different measures. And here we see how in 2018 it had reached Escalac, and then Belize in 2021. It was still affecting areas of Belize and Honduras in 2022. And here there is a particular area. The Banco Chinchorro was defined as free of this illness. Okay.
In 2022, for the report for healthy people, it was identified that Banco Chinchorro was still free, and it's a reserve of Ovispera, which has a surface of 144,000 hectares approximately, and it's also a important size was MAB UNESCO site, and it's and so it's important. In 2021, we can follow a progressive events that occurred related to what we've shared in the other presentations. In 2021, we had the opportunity to train the first generation of brigadiers, and a training that was given by TNSA and Marfan. In 2023, in April, after the report of 2022 of Healthy Reefs, we received the first report where in a organization which we work very closely with, we received a report from them where it was informed that there was probably a possible case of stony coral tissue loss disease. This that detonated the response immediate, and first we had to inform all of the community, everybody that had relationship with investigators, fisheries, and business people. And we already had a plan to disinfect the different equipments to that are related with the stony coral tissue loss disease. And 7 days after, there was a inspection to confirm the presence of the disease. And in that first action, we we called different specialists from institutions, Doctora Claudia Padilla and Lorenzo Avales Felipe from Healthy Reefs. They started to review what could be done in Banco Chinchorro and have in the different priorities and different specialists in the topic. And we started to invite and we started to identify a very particular zone in the more north side of the Banco Chinchorro. We found a big colony of different of the species of coral that we had identified, and it was a species that wasn't very abundant in correspondence to the others, and that gave it more importance. So we started to prioritize our efforts. So the 5th of April, we presented a response a proposal for the emergency, and we did it directly through a third party, which is the organization of natural spaces. And the 13th of June, this was approved, and we had a funding of $24,000 approximately, and we had to wait till July of 2023 to implement the actions. And in November of 2023, for those of you that are more familiarized with the emergency fund, there is a in 2023 we shared a final report, and the actions that we finished with the fund in 2024 of April 2024. And what was this project? The princip the first objective was first to do localization and rescue and different colonies of coral, and we identified highly susceptible species, Dendrochida cylindrus and Meodrina melindrites, and we did a revision of all these techniques and methodologies that we could implement. And we found that in a few of the sites, the the isolated areas, which are more far from the coral reefs, could show the lower te- lower rates of infection, and the Neandrohilus was one that had a shorter or slower growth. So we could then, with this information, propose to Marfa how to do the rescuing. So it was very complicated at the beginning because there wasn't it wasn't very well defined what was the elements that we wanted to measure. So there we could afterwards justify what was the so after more measurements and identifying different stages of the project, we could identify more measurable and evaluable rates, and we identified different colonies and sites to establish the nurseries of coral, and where we analyzed also the water quality, and we could understand the way the disease spread through this area, and everything was following the currents and how the water currents moved. That's how we identified how the disease spread. And then we established nurseries in the sites to translate, to move and follow up with rescued colonies. And the main learnings we had was that the importance of have a plan of action to the of response after storms that will guide us and help us design the plan according to the conditions of the geographical and social area where we have. And for example, in Banco Chinchorro, it's very different. The dynamics are very different socially and economically, and different to Quintana Roo, for example, where the way to address these problems is very different. That's why it's very important to have these plans of action. And also the contingency plans to use the emergency funds are very important. And also Claudia Ruiz has made it very, very clear in every. Just to tell you that we're a bit over time, so we only have 1 minute. And another important thing for the brigades is always to increment the the quantity of allies and of brigades, because we never know how big the impact will be. And the more hands we have, the quicker we can make a response. What are the different challenges is to find different brigades and have more actors in the field and have response plans that integrate the different scenarios that the fund of emergency can help. And in where are we going now? We have a project with Marfund Fundraise, which will looks to strengthen the capacities in different areas, and in between them is the making of plans of action, of contingency, and increments of capacity to respond to brigades in the south. And this intervention that we have with Dendrochida cylindrus, after almost 3 years of having done it, we still have the hope that these colonies will come back to the ecosystem and are able to integrate and grow. So finally, I want to thank the brigadiers of the area and the initiative of reef rescue, and there were many actors that helped us in this project, and I want to thank them all. And so thank you all, and we're open to the questions now. Thank you, Irving, for your presentation. It was very interesting. So now we can have the questions. The first question is for Claudia. Do you think that same to the protocols to the attention of hydrocarbons? I consider yes, but is there anything that you would add? I definitely think that we're taking too long in these different actions that we have commented in different moments. When the hydrocarbon was leaked in Veracruz, there has to be protocols that allow us to minimize the damages. So when we face new situations or a different situation, we always stress and act like it's a new experience, but we already have experience that we could start to recover and apply in these different situations. We had, for example, an affected colony in the nurseries of Contoy, and we acted immediately. So, and we were able to rescue and allow it to keep spreading to the rest of the nursery. So there is an effect to lesser these damages when you do an intervention. And overall, what to do when you want to evaluate the causes. For example, take up upper timely and effective water samples and knowing where to take them to process them and get information that can be useful to us, and have all the measurements of the knowledge of the temperature of the site and quality of water. And I think this is definitely what we should start to implement to include this in our plans of action.
Thank you for staying on another 5 minutes to answer the questions. And if you would like, and the next question, they would like to know what considerations they should take into account when, or were taken into account when they did the updating of the brigades and the new protocol. Well, I think this is a question for two people. Claudia Padilla, you could answer the considerations for updating the protocol, and Claudia Ruiz, if you like, can you answer which situations were considered for the courses? Yes, we take into account the experience of different brigades uh, based on the surveys, and we start to identify what things needed changes, ask very precise questions about what part of the protocol do you think is not very clear, or what would you like to see in the protocol? And based on these first opinions, then we generated the different inputs that ended with the protocol itself. It was a long task with a lot of revision, a lot of refinement, and of the different contributions too. Thank you, Claudia. Well, basically, it's the same thing. Yes, during the training, we did identify that there were some issues or some practices that needed to be updated within the training courses. And so, based on opportunities to improve, we identified that we needed to update the method of training and the content of the courses. And definitely for that, we also had to update the protocol. So it's all linked. You update the protocol, so you update the training. Basically, this is the summary. Thank you. Thank you, Claudia. Next question. Are we going to share the presentations? Yes, we are going to share the presentations. We will upload them to place them on our webpage. And I think that also we have the link on the chat, so there are videos that you can visit. There's another question that says, from Melina, says, thank you and congratulations for the new protocol and showing us how to update the capacities of the brigade. So I think Claudia Ruiz already answered this question. So let's pass to the next. Well, I think those are all the questions. No, there is one more. Claudia, could you help me to leader to coordinate a update of protocol for hydrocarbons? Could you help me with that? I participate and support you, but I think that those that have greater knowledge on how to do it and which are is the scope of this are the CONANP colleagues and the reef system of Banco Chinchorro. We have another question in Facebook for Irving that says, with what techniques were used to measure the water, the water, it's not clear what he said, it's breaking up. So anyway, the parameters were evaluators, nitrates, coliforms, fecal coliforms, total coliforms. This implies analysis that is more specific, where you take it to the lab, they give you results. The methodology we use is how we implement it is from different sites through a long Banco Chinchorro. We take these samples of water, and in the results, we realized that in the area that was less affected, the levels were lower. So even though it did not represent that the site was further out, it was deeper, etc., this information was complemented the decision making of establishing the nurseries, and this is how we decided on this theme. Thank you very much. One comment. In the case of Mexico, said Maria del Carmen, the person in charge of this is the Marine Secretary, and with them, we work with the managers. We do simulations every year, but I think that we could talk with them to prepare brigaders from the society. On behalf of the Marine Secretary, it would be a pleasure to participate with them. So I would ask from here if it is pertinent to do this, because Mexico has a secretariat that has certain norms, but I think that we could do this in a collaborative manner through the CONANP, because we are invited to these protocols. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, María del Carmen. Again, thank you to all the presenters for their great presentations. Thank you very much to everybody who assisted and all the questions. And we thank you for your time and your attention. And we close now. And thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.